the boats.
To have a witness tell me it's true because I said so and because my friends say so, that doesn't mean it's true to me.
This is GPS.
It could be true.
They provided
GPS. That doesn't tell me what happened to Nolan. Just because they got GPS,
they provided Life 360.
They came back.
They provided Life 360. They provided the CETO call, and you can put those two things together and say, okay, the timeline matches. And if they left at 4:30, they were already
Nolan
gone.
Wells disappeared from Horn Island, leaving one central question unresolved. Where was he when the boats departed? And could a reported altercation explain what happened next?
Torpedo!
2 confirmed witnesses that saw Nolan Wells on the island around 6 p.m. The Triton, as you said, left around 4:30.
What witnesses? Where? Who, what, where, why, and when? Has an altercation witness emerged? A witness that claims she saw an altercation at...
According to the source discussion, the Triton left Horn Island at approximately 7:30 p.m.
We just saw some video from your show, and I'm trying to figure out, among other things, what time and day, if you have a time and a date stamp on that, that seemingly shows the Triton with a lot of people on it leaving the island, leaving Horn Island. Do you have a timestamp on that?
I don't have the timestamp. I can ask them to see if they can get it to me. When I watched this video and they presented it to me, this was during the time that the CETO call was occurring. So it had to have been right around that time. You could see Wyatt on the boat on the phone. And so this is how it was presented to me. And just a
Brandon Tatum said Life 360 information, boat GPS data, and the CETO call supported that departure timeline. He argued that the records showed when the boat left, the route it followed, and where it later docked, but GPS data can establish the location of a boat or track device, not necessarily every person connected to it. Nancy Grace therefore focused on the crucial gap. Where was Nolan immediately before the Triton departed? And who could reliably place him on Horn Island afterward?
I was going with you until you said the time Nolan was last seen. Because their GPS data, I'm sure, is correct. And their Life 360 data, I'm sure, is correct. I'm not arguing with the technology. But what happened just before that? Where was Nolan when they're leaving the island? If you can place him on that island at 5 or 6 o'clock, please do it. And then I will turn attention elsewhere. I'm not trying to hang your friends, the people that you have interviewed. And I respect that you believe them, and maybe you're right. If he can be placed on that island at 5 or 6 o'clock, then they're in the clear.
Tatum referred to reports that 2 witnesses saw Nolan on the island shortly before 6:00 p.m.
Reports have come out that there's 2 reliable witnesses. TMZ reported on this. They said they saw Nolan a little bit before 6 p.m. There was also the young lady, Katie, who sent text messages to one of the boys that I interviewed. I saw the text messages where she alluded to the fact that she did not see Nolan get on the boat. She heard the boys yelling for Nolan to get on the boat. So Nolan never got back on the boat that he came on. So you have the boats leaving. You have a CETO call. You have testimony from everybody on the boat. And all of those things have to be taken in consideration.
He also described messages he said he reviewed from a young woman named Katie. According to his account, Katie did not see Nolan board the Triton, but heard the young men calling for him to get on the boat. If credible and accurately timed, those accounts could support the claim that Nolan remained on Horn Island after the Triton departed. However, the reference discussion did not independently establish the witnesses' identities, exactly when they saw Nolan, or how they recognized him. The timeline became more complicated when another woman reportedly claimed that she witnessed Nolan involved in an altercation with another man.
I want to talk about not what you want to talk about, Brandon Tatum, which is they had nothing to do with this because I met them and I believe them. So noted. Can we talk about a potential witness to an altercation? And she seems to suggest it was over Katie. Why? Don't know what the altercation was. Maybe it was, hey, leave her alone and get on the boat. Or leave her alone, she's my girlfriend. Or it could be anything. But if there is a witness placing Nolan seemingly in the water, I can't tell that, but having an argument with another person, a partier at Horn Island, that is significant. It could prove or disprove your friend's timeline.
Well,
The discussion suggested the confrontation may have concerned Katie, but neither the cause nor the precise timing was confirmed. It was also unclear whether the witness formally provided her account to investigators. Tatum acknowledged that investigators should examine the claim, but he remained skeptical.
Well, Nancy, I think that it's a big obstacle to climb here because I've never heard of this altercation whatsoever. Nobody that I've talked to have alluded that this altercation was real. And also Katie, whom I saw her text messages, she didn't even say this altercation occurred. What I will say is that if I was an investigator in this investigation, I want to hear that. I want to be able to compare that information to other things that we may have or other witness statements. But I don't think it's significant because it doesn't show if Nolan Wells was actually killed in that altercation. She's claiming that there was an altercation between him arguing with somebody else. There was a potential fight, but that doesn't get me to how did he drown? How did he get in the water? And how did he not recover and come home to his family? So I would take that into consideration. I would compare that to the other interviews that I've done, but I don't think it's significant whatsoever. However, I would be incredibly skeptical because there's no other statements that I've heard from anybody that comes even close to an altercation with Nolan Wells and others over a girl.
He said none of the people he interviewed had mentioned such a confrontation, and the messages he reviewed from Katie did not describe one. More importantly, he argued that an altercation alone would not explain how Nolan entered the water or whether the encounter contributed to his death. Grace viewed the alleged timing differently. She argued that a confrontation shortly before Nolan's death could be circumstantial evidence requiring closer examination.
Number one, he's dead shortly after an alleged altercation with another male. We think over a woman. See, in my world, I put together both circumstantial and direct evidence. Direct evidence would be, for instance, DNA or a fingerprint. Circumstantial evidence is the timing of the alleged altercation and his death. Right?
Nancy,
so
but Nancy,
it's hard for me to believe that there's some kind of altercation on Horn Island just before he dies, and they were not connected. That's hard for me.
That would not prove the altercation caused his death, but it could identify who was near him and help reconstruct his final known movements. The discussion also addressed reported autopsy observations.
Well, Nancy, she's not saying he lost the fight. She's not saying that he got beat up. If you look at the autopsy, there's no clear signs of blunt force trauma to his face or any of the vital areas that could kill him. So it doesn't appear that there's any indication that he lost a fight, that there was enough trauma in this particular fight that would lead to his death. And when you look at the autopsy, there is no blunt force trauma to his face. There is no lacerations or damages to the back of his head. This is redness that was underneath the skin.
Oh, wait, are you looking at the screen? Because I'm looking at a big red mark on the back of his head.
Yeah, but this is underneath the skin. This is not a big red gash that's in the back of his head, which would be consistent with blunt force trauma. This is something that occurred underneath the skin that could have been from pulling.
Tatum said the material he reviewed did not show clear injuries to Nolan's face or vital areas establishing fatal blunt force trauma. A red area on the back of Nolan's head was debated, with Tatum suggesting it could have resulted from blood pooling after death. That was his interpretation, not a definitive forensic conclusion established within the discussion. The reported witnesses' credibility would therefore be critical.
Discuss it. You know, Brandon Tatum joining us, Officer Tatum on YouTube. I've cross-examined a lot of witnesses, and I cross-examined them exactly on that. How far away were you? Did you know the target? Were you familiar with them? Was your vision obstructed by anything? Were you wearing glasses? Were you wearing sunglasses? What time of the day? I mean, I could go on and on and on. But unless you have a nun, a priest, or a virgin on the stand, or maybe Angel Gabriel might come down and testify, you have to take your witness as you find them. And I'm sure you've had a lot of drunk witnesses in Tucson to everything from a bar fight to a murder to a dope deal. Look, I'd say a good 50% of witnesses were drunk at one time or the other. That doesn't mean they didn't see what they saw.
Well,
Investigators would need to determine whether she knew Nolan, how far away she was, whether her view was obstructed, and which identifying features allowed her to recognize him.
Well, from a law enforcement perspective, this is not cross-examination on the stand. This is us, what I would deal with a witness is right on the scene. And I'm not too concerned of whether the person is drunk or not. I'm not going to test their blood alcohol level on the scene. I want to know specifically, what did you see? What are the identifying markers that you have to say that this is Nolan? If the person can describe them, maybe we'll do a show up. If we have like a video or a picture or something, we could show them and say, hey, does this match the person you think that was here? Then we'll have a good perspective. But there is a challenge here, because you do have to identify him. You can't just say it was a black man out there with curly hair and I think it was Nolan. You're going to have some clear identifying markers that this is Nolan, and then you have to identify the people
They would also need to identify the other people allegedly involved and establish exactly when the confrontation occurred. According to the source material, the woman posted publicly about the incident and said she intended to contact police.
To come forward. However, interesting, she did post it. She did identify herself. She did say she was going to police. And that would be my first line of cross. Did you take this to the police? And if she said no, all H-E-double-L break out in that courtroom. If you have information like this and you don't go to the police, no, fur would fly. Fur would fly. You ever seen a dog fight? That's what I mean by that. Fur would fly. So that would be a line of cross-exam to Brandon Tatum.
But it remained unclear whether she followed through.
On her social media, she never responded to us. I don't know if she ever really sent it in to the police, but it is problematic, in my opinion, if she hasn't. If you're going to say somebody is going to spend time in jail, or you're alluding to the fact they've committed a crime, and the fact now that we know that Nolan did not survive being out there at Horn Island, and you never submitted that to law enforcement, there's a potential that's tampering with evidence. If you have evidence of a crime and you're withholding that from law enforcement, and you knowingly and intentionally are doing that, that could be very problematic for a person who claimed to be a witness.
A social media post is not the same as a formal witness interview, in which investigators can test the account against video, digital records, and other statements.
For a person who claimed to be a witness.
No. Morally, it's wrong, but there is no duty under the law that you have to report yourself as a witness, that you have to volunteer information. You can stand on the side of a pool and watch somebody drown and do nothing unless you have a fiduciary capacity, and it's not a crime in our jurisprudence. So nothing is compelling her under the law to come forward. However,
the boat searches created another unresolved issue.
Just to kind of answer your question about the boat searches, it's partially irrelevant depending on the investigation and the interviews that they've done. There is no indication that there was a crime committed on any one of these boats. When you have 60 people that have already given statements to law enforcement, you have the young men that I interviewed that were on their boat that left the island, and then you have people that saw Nolan on the island after they had left. It's no indication that Nolan was on any one of those boats at any point in time and that a murder occurred on those boats. So regardless if they searched them or not, it was offered up for them to use a cadaver-dog, but that never occurred. And so I don't really think that the boat situation or search is significant. The boys submitted their Life 360, which is how they got a GPS tracking of when they left the island and how they got from point A to point B, where they docked and all of those things. So all of the information has been concluded, or at least have been explored, and it didn't appear that there was any foul play on any one of them.
Tatum said a cadaver dog had been offered but was never used. He considered the boat search less significant because numerous people had reportedly given statements and the Triton occupants had provided location data. Grace challenged that reasoning, emphasizing that the information showed the boat So the boat's movements without explaining what happened to
That there's any
Nolan.
foul play on any one of the boats.
Okay, Officer Tatum, I respect everything that you just said. But to have a witness tell me it's true because I said so and because my friends say so, that doesn't mean it's true to me.
This is GPS.
It could be true.
They
And I see
they provided
GPS, that doesn't tell me what happened to Nolan. Just because they
No, I'm
got
saying
GPS,
they provided
that
Life
means they
360,
came back.
which is they provided Life 360. They provided the CETO call, and you can put those two things together and say, okay, the timeline matches. And if they left at 4:30, they were already gone. All three boats that came out were already gone when Nolan was last seen. So now you have a timeline that's consistent
Okay, right there,
with evidence
right there,
that they presented.
right there. I was going with you until you
The
said
alleged altercation witness could complicate the timeline without necessarily contradicting the Triton's reported departure. The discussion suggested that the confrontation may have occurred after the boat, and the young men interviewed by Tatum had already
Nolan was
left.
on the boat whatsoever. They're giving statements. Katie gave a statement. Even this person is claiming that they saw Nolan get into a fist fight. It appears that this person is claiming that the fight has happened after Wyatt and the rest of them had left on the boat.
If that timing is accurate, the account could place Nolan on Horn Island later, while shifting attention toward other people who remained nearby. But that conclusion still depends on verification. The boat's departure time, reported late sightings, witness identification, and timing of the alleged confrontation must all be placed on one reliable timeline. Based on the reference material, the witness's claim is not proof of a crime, but it cannot be dismissed without examination. Until investigators verify who saw Nolan, when they saw him, and what occurred after the boats departed, the alleged altercation remains another potentially important, but unconfirmed, piece of the Nolan Wells case.